At exactly 6:30 in the morning, a billionaire came home early, hoping to surprise his daughter before her school recital. Instead, he found his housekeeper standing beside a dumpster, holding a newborn baby pulled from the trash. Within minutes, accusations were made, trust was shattered, and a secret buried for months began clawing its way into the light, because that baby wasn't just abandoned, he was family, and he was only the beginning. The cry came just after dawn, not loud, not strong, barely there. Angela David stopped mid-step behind the Marshall Estate kitchen, one hand clutching her sweater as the sound reached her again, thin, broken, desperate. She had worked through sickness, grief, and exhaustion before. She knew the difference between noise and need. This was need, the kind that didn't wait. Angela followed the sound past the recycling bins, past the hedges heavy with morning dew, toward the large metal dumpster tucked behind the stone wall. Her heart began to race. "No, no, please, no," she whispered, already knowing. She lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in a yellow blanket that had once been soft but now looked damp and stained, lay a newborn baby. His lips were blue. His chest barely moved. For a split second, Angela couldn't breathe. Then instinct took over. She climbed in, pulled him against her chest, rubbing his tiny back, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since her own child had died years ago. "Please," she begged, "please don't let him die like this. Not alone." She pressed her cheek against his cold forehead, and that was when a car engine cut through the silence. Julian Marshall had imagined this morning differently. London meetings cut short, a surprise hug for Emma, pride in her small piano recital. Instead, he stepped out of his car and saw something that made his entire body lock. Angela, standing near the trash bins, holding a screaming newborn. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. Angela spun around, eyes wide with shock and relief. "I didn't know you were coming home, sir." Julian's gaze dropped to the baby, then snapped back to her face. "Whose baby is that?" "Please," Angela said, stepping forward instinctively. "Just let me explain." "Explain?" His voice hardened. "Did you give birth? Is this yours? How long has this been going on?" The baby cried louder, as if responding to the tension. "It's not mine," Angela said quickly. Julian stepped closer, his mind racing through ugly possibilities. "Then whose is it?" he snapped. "My daughter lives here. I trusted you." Security Officer Derek appeared, hand hovering near his radio. "Mr. Marshall, everything okay?" Julian didn't take his eyes off Angela. "I don't know yet." Angela's hands shook. "Sir, please, just read the note. This isn't what you think. This is about your family." Julian froze. "My family?" he repeated slowly. Angela swallowed hard, tears spilling now. "His name is David," she said. "He's your nephew." Julian felt the world tilt beneath him. "My nephew is dead," he said hoarsely. "He died 6 months ago." Angela reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, unfolded so many times the creases had softened. "She left this." Julian took it, read it once, then again. "I can't do this alone. David's gone. The money's gone. Please, save him. Don't let them take him. I'm sorry. His throat closed. "She was pregnant," he whispered. "She gave birth alone," Angela said. 3 days ago. Then she left him in that dumpster to die." Julian looked at the baby again. His brother's son, 3 days old, alive only because someone who had nothing refused to walk away. "Where is she?" Julian asked. "I don't know," Angela said. "Her apartment's empty. Phone's dead. I've been looking everywhere. 3 days. Then a small voice cut through the silence. "Daddy?" Emma stood in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Is the baby okay?" Julian's heart cracked open. He knelt. "What do you know about this, sweetheart?" Emma looked at Angela. "I help her," she said softly. "At night, I feed him." Julian felt something inside him collapse. Inside the security office, the screen flickered. September 18th, 2:47 a.m. A car entered the gate. Madison. Julian leaned closer. She stepped out, hollow, distant, carrying something wrapped in cloth. She walked to the dumpster, lifted the lid, placed the bundle inside, then stood there, staring down, longer than necessary. Julian couldn't breathe. The phone rang. "Mr. Marshall," the voice said. "This is St. Catherine's Hospital. We have Madison Marshall here. She overdosed. She's alive. Barely." Julian hung up slowly. Everything he thought he knew was gone. Madison sat by the window, thin, shaking. "He's supposed to be gone," she whispered when she saw the baby. "I left him so he wouldn't suffer," she sobbed, "so he wouldn't grow up knowing his mother wanted to die." Julian knelt in front of her. "I failed David," he said, "but you didn't fail this baby." And then heels clicked against tile. Eleanor Marshall entered, cold, perfect. "We'll arrange a discreet adoption," she said calmly. "Protect the family name." "No," Julian said. And when an 8-year-old finally spoke, "Names don't hug you," Emma said. Something irreversible happened. The hospital room felt too small for the truth that lived inside it. Madison sat with her knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to keep from falling apart. The baby, her baby, was still crying softly in Angela's arms, but Madison no longer flinched at the sound. She deserved the pain. That's what she believed. Julian stood near the door, his hands clenched so tightly, his fingernails cut into his palms. He had faced hostile boardrooms, billion-dollar losses, public humiliation, but none of that compared to the quiet devastation of seeing his brother's widow reduced to this. "You came to Mother," he said finally. Madison didn't look up. "3 months ago," she whispered. "I told her everything. I begged." Her voice cracked on the word begged. "She looked at me like I was a problem to be managed, not a person, not family." Julian closed his eyes. Eleanor Marshall had always believed silence was strength. She had taught him that appearances mattered more than pain. And now, standing here, Julian saw the cost of that belief. Angela shifted the baby gently, rubbing his back in slow circles. She had seen women like Madison before, women whose spirits had been crushed so quietly the world never noticed. "Madison?" Angela said softly. "You didn't leave him because you didn't love him." Madison finally looked up, her eyes red and raw. "I left him because I thought love wasn't enough." That sentence landed heavier than any accusation. Julian's phone vibrated in his pocket. Once, then again. He ignored it at first. Nothing felt more important than the human wreckage in front of him. But when it buzzed a third time, something in his gut twisted. He stepped into the hallway and checked the screen. Unknown number. She's not the only one. Julian stared at the words. A chill ran through him, slow and deliberate. "Not the only one?" He typed back with shaking fingers. "What do you mean?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then another message. "Check the hospital records. September 15th. Labor and delivery." Julian's breath hitched. That was the night Madison gave birth. He went back inside, his face drained of color. Angela noticed immediately. "What is it?" she asked. Julian handed her the phone. Angela read the message once, then again. Her hand flew to her mouth. Madison's voice trembled. "What? What's happening?" Julian swallowed hard. "Someone is telling me you weren't the only woman who gave birth that night." The room went very, very still. Madison's breathing became shallow. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." Julian crouched in front of her. "Think carefully," he said. "Anything unusual? Anyone you saw?" Madison closed her eyes, forcing herself back into the memory. "The hallway," she said slowly. "There was a girl." Her eyes snapped open. She was crying, young, sitting on the floor with her knees pulled in. She looked terrified. Angela felt her stomach drop. "Did she have anyone with her?" she asked. Madison shook her head. "No." She kept asking the nurse if someone would call her parents. The nurse kept saying they couldn't reach anyone. Julian's pulse quickened. "And then?" "The nurse stayed with me," Madison continued, "after the baby was born. She went back into the hallway." Madison's voice faded. "I don't know what happened after that. I left before morning. I couldn't stay." Julian looked at his phone again. "She's not the only one." The phone buzzed again, a photo this time. Julian opened it, and his heart stopped. An empty hospital bassinet, a handwritten note taped to the side. "Please forgive me. I can't do this. The timestamp burned into his mind. September 15th, 11:47 p.m. Angela stared at the screen, horrified. That's the same floor, Madison whispered. The same night. Julian's mind raced. Another baby, another mother, another silence. Who sent this? Madison asked. Julian dialed the number. It rang once, then disconnected. A second later, the phone rang back. Julian answered instantly. "My name is Diane Porter," a woman said, her voice shaking. "I'm a nurse at County General." Julian held the phone tightly. "You sent the messages?" "Yes," she whispered, "and I'm so sorry." Angela could hear her crying through the speaker. "There was another girl that night," Diane continued. 17, alone, no ID. She left before morning rounds. Julian's jaw tightened. "And the baby?" Silence. "I don't know," Diane said. "I reported it. My supervisor told me not to make trouble." Angela felt rage rise in her chest. "So you did nothing?" "I checked the security footage," Diane sobbed. "I saw a man come in later. He took the baby." Julian's blood turned to ice. "You saw his face?" "No," Diane said. "But I saved the footage before they deleted it." Julian closed his eyes. "Send it," he said. "Now." Before hanging up, Diane whispered one last thing. The girl wrote something on the whiteboard before she left. Julian's heart pounded. What did she write? "Help me." The line went dead. Minutes later, the footage arrived. Grainy, black and white. A hooded man entered the room, lifted the baby, turned. Just enough. Julian froze the frame. Angela leaned closer. "Do you know him?" Julian's mouth went dry. "Yes," he said hollowly. "That's Paul." Angela frowned. "Your driver?" Julian nodded slowly. 8 years, he whispered. 8 years I trusted him with my daughter. The realization hit harder with every second. Paul's daughter, 17, pregnant. Julian staggered back as the pieces fell into place. "Oh, God," Angela whispered. He thought he was helping. Julian felt sick. Fear didn't make monsters. It made desperate people make unforgivable choices. Julian stood suddenly. "We're finding him," he said. Madison rose shakily to her feet. "I'm coming. You need rest," Julian said. Madison shook her head. "That girl is me," she said firmly. "And if someone hadn't found my baby, I wouldn't be standing here." Angela nodded. "We go together." As they left the hospital, Julian's phone buzzed again. A message from Paul's number. But the words weren't Paul's. "Please don't come looking. It's already too late." Julian's heart dropped. "No," he whispered. "Not again." Paul's house sat at the end of a quiet street, the kind of place people passed every day without ever wondering what kind of pain lived behind the walls. Julian parked the car and cut the engine. No one moved. The message still glowed on his phone screen. "It's already too late." Angela stared at the house. The porch light was off, curtains drawn. The windows looked dark, but not empty. More like someone inside didn't want to be seen. Julian opened the door. "We go together," Angela said quietly. Inside, the air smelled stale, heavy with something unspoken. Julian knocked. Nothing. He knocked again, harder. "Paul," Julian called out. "I know you're in there." Silence. Then, faint, broken, unmistakable. A girl crying. Not a baby. A girl. Julian's heart slammed against his ribs. "Paul," he said, his voice lower now. "If you don't open this door, I'm calling the police." Seconds passed. Then the lock clicked. Paul stood there, gray-haired, shaking, eyes red and swollen like he hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Marshall," he whispered, "you shouldn't be here." Julian stepped inside. "Where is your daughter?" Paul's shoulders collapsed inward. "Upstairs." "And the baby?" Paul's knees buckled. He grabbed the wall to stay upright. "He's gone." Angela felt the word like a punch to the chest. "Gone?" she whispered. "What do you mean, gone?" Paul sobbed openly now. "I tried," he said. "I swear I tried. She couldn't keep him. She's just a kid. I thought I was protecting her." Julian stepped closer. "So what did you do?" Paul swallowed hard. "I took him to a church, St. Mary's. I left him there during Sunday service. I thought someone good would find him, someone who could give him a life." Madison pushed forward. "When?" she demanded. "This morning," Paul said. "Just after dawn." Angela's breath caught. "That was hours ago." Paul shook his head helplessly. "I called the church. They said no one found a baby." The room tilted. Then from upstairs, "Daddy?" A voice. Young, shaking, raw. "Where's my baby?" Madison moved before anyone could stop her. Up the stairs, 2 at a time. She pushed open the bedroom door. A girl sat on the floor, arms wrapped around herself, rocking back and forth. 17. Skin pale, eyes empty. She looked up slowly. Madison knelt in front of her without hesitation. "My name is Madison," she said gently, "and 3 days ago, I left my baby in a dumpster." The girl froze. Madison didn't look away. "I thought he'd be better off without me," she continued. "I thought my brokenness would poison him." The girl's lip trembled. "But he wasn't," Madison said. "He needed me, and your baby needs you too." Tears spilled freely now. "What if he's gone?" the girl whispered. Madison took her hands. "Then we face it together. But I don't think he is." The girl searched her face. "What's your name?" "Lily." Madison nodded. "Lily, when was the last time you prayed?" Lily shook her head. "I don't think God hears people like me." Madison squeezed her hands. "He does, especially people like you." Downstairs, Julian's phone rang. "Mr. Marshall," a calm voice said. "This is Father Michael from St. Mary's." Julian stood perfectly still. "We found something unusual in our donation box," the priest continued. "A baby boy, wrapped in a hospital blanket." Julian's knees nearly gave out. "He's alive?" Julian asked. "Yes," Father Michael said gently. "And there's a note. It has your phone number." They arrived minutes later. In the church office, inside a donation box lined with coats and blankets, slept a baby boy. Lily dropped to her knees. She lifted him carefully, sobbing. "I'm here," she whispered. "Mama's here." Paul stood frozen in the doorway, grief and relief tearing him apart at the same time. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I thought fear was love." Julian looked at him. "We all did," he said quietly. "Healing didn't happen overnight." Madison entered therapy. Lily stayed. Paul faced consequences, but not abandonment. Angela watched over both babies like a quiet guardian, and Julian changed. Not publicly, privately. He canceled trips, missed meetings, learned how to hold a baby, learned how to listen. The Marshall estate looked different, not because of renovations, but because of who lived there. Madison worked as a counselor for struggling mothers. Lily finished school online, her son always close. Angela had her own cottage now, a nursery, a place where no child would ever be hidden. Julian started a foundation, the David and Daniel Foundation. One mission: no woman should ever feel so alone that abandoning her child feels like the only option. Moral of the story: sometimes the greatest sins are not acts of cruelty, but acts of silence. Hospitals stayed quiet, families protected names, people looked away, and babies almost disappeared. But God has a way of using ordinary people to interrupt tragedy. A housekeeper who didn't walk away, a child who spoke truth without fear, a broken mother who chose honesty over shame. Love isn't perfect, it's present. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to stay silent when the world tells you to. If this story moved you, don't scroll past it. Subscribe to Momentum Stories for real stories that restore faith in humanity. And remember, the smallest acts of courage often save the biggest lives.